The vignettes are about architectural topics. They are architecturally related. They are next door to architecture. They are not, however, architecture. No drawing you will do in any of the vignettes will actually look like any real architectural drawing you would do in your office. That's really sort of not what they're trying to get across. One key thing to take away is that there are these sort of ideas and issues that they want you to be able to both understand and demonstrate that you understand, and that's going to be the main thing about what we're talking about today. But the other thing is, and this is a little part of the ridiculousness, which is why they're finally getting rid of these vignettes, is that you also just need to know how to use the program. So you should spend some time and go get the program. You can get onto NCARB. You can actually get to them from the Black Spectacles site. You can get to them from NCARB site, and you sort of make your computer into like a little terminal, and you download the interface, and there you sort of can take off and just test it out. It is partly about the architectural concepts that we're talking about, but it is also at least 50% you being familiar and comfortable with the program itself. So we're not really going to focus too much on that right now. That's something you have to kind of do on your own just to kind of get used to it and used to how you use the toolbars and what kinds of systems there are. We'll mention it a little bit as we go along, but it is one of those things you have to get kind of used to. The other thing I want to mention is that these are not, as I said, they're not architecture. So I'm going to write down not architecture. So just so you kind of hammer that home, it's not even drawing. So it's not drawing. Like, what do I mean by that? Like, well, it's not that you have a toolbar that's going to give you a line tool that you can then make some lines that will then become like walls. It's not even like Revit where you can say, all right, I'm going to grab a wall tool and I'm going to make some walls and that will become like a building. It's actually, I'm going to be grabbing rooms or a chair or a number of joists, and I'm going to put them all in at once. Right? It's this very abstracted way of thinking about drawing. So don't think of it as a drawing. Don't think of it as architecture. And it's not really even reasonable. It's really, there are very specific things it's looking for. It's not trying to make a sort of a reasonable argument about what a building should look like. So it's just not a reasonable process. So don't expect it to be, and don't fret about that. Don't worry about it. Don't make a big deal out of the fact that what you're being asked to do is kind of crazy. Just accept it and move on, because that's the whole thing here, is these things are puzzles. They are architectural puzzles. So when you think of it in that way, it should make a lot more sense. This is a situation where there's going to be a bunch of information, a bunch of rules given to you. You have to figure out how to follow those rules. You're going to remember some information. You're going to jot down other information. You're going to bring one thing from one place and put it in another. You're going to make a nice little pattern out of these things. And that pattern will be sort of architecturally intended, but it is not architecture. It is an architecturally related puzzle. So that's the key thing. If you can take anything away from this discussion, that's the key thing. One of the things that people have trouble with all the time when they start doing these vignettes is they try to make them architecture. They start thinking about design. They start thinking about making something beautiful or what would be the most efficient. And for the most part, we don't care about any of that. That's just not what's being tested here. And you're wasting your time if you are, and actually quite likely going to do something that will make you fail. You want to do just enough to show competency in being able to organize the puzzle into a reasonable answer in the type of answer that they are looking for. Not the right kind of answer, not the best architecture, not something that's beautiful, but what's the kind of answer for this puzzle that they are looking for. That's how you should be approaching it. What do they want to see? We did 3 sample vignettes, 1 section, 1 structure, and 1 topography. They're relatively simple ones. We wanted to make it fairly easy to talk about. And the reason that we chose those is that the section, the point of what we're going to be talking about for the section is that we want you to sort of get used to the idea that they're going to be asking you a question that seems very straightforward, but then you realize you have to search somewhere else for more information. So that's kind of the main thing that we'll talk about with the section, and I'll talk about that in a minute. With the structure vignette, the main thing about that one is going to be the fact that we're going to be talking about it in 2D, but you have to be thinking about it in 3D. And there's a couple of those: the roof, the stair, the section, the structure vignette. It's a bunch of those where you're drawing it in 2D, but you have to think of it in 3D, and there's no place for you to get 3D information. You just have to kind of build it in your brain while you're doing the vignette. And then the third one, the topography, this is one where we're going to talk about a little bit. For the most part, you only do what you're asked. Don't go above and beyond, just do the things that you are asked to do. However, there are certain kinds of topics that you are expected to bring to the table, and that's one of the things that we'll talk about on the topography one as sort of an example.